Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Well, check out Deal to Heal Teas. With our inspirational teas, you're sure to find something that will inspire you. Just go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. That's Deal to Heal Teas. Get some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. That's Deal to Heal Teas at dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Hey guys, this is Ernest James, host of the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, and I got a question to ask you. Could you buy me a cheeseburger? Better yet, could you buy me a value meal? Yes? Well, guess what? I don't need a value meal. However, for the cost of a value meal, you can support this podcast to keep us on the air. Just go to Patreon/Deal to Heal podcast and choose any one of the 3 tiers that's available. And if you just want to make a one-time donation, go to Cash App and make a donation to $EJames, the number 418. Make a one-time donation to the Cash App, or again, go to Patreon to support this podcast and keep us on the air. Thanks in advance. Be blessed. Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Ernest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, to heal, and to fulfill. To deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you haven't already, make sure that you guys listen, like, subscribe, and share to our podcast. Make sure you're following us on YouTube, on Facebook, and all of our social media, all of your social media platforms, because we're pretty much on all of them. Look up Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, and you will find us there. Definitely want to get up our numbers on YouTube. So please follow us on YouTube, and then don't keep it to yourself, but share it with somebody else. You know what I'm saying? If you know that you like what you hear, I'm sure you know someone who could use some uplifting and some healing in some different areas. And so, let somebody else know that we out here. You know what I'm saying? Share the love. Also, I'm gonna let you guys know how you can win $100 from the podcast, but you got to stay until the end to get that information. You got to stay to the end of the podcast to find out how you can win $100 from the podcast. Next thing I want to talk about is our product of the week. So our product of the week this week is our Purpose Tea, which can be found at Deal to Heal Teas on Shopify. And so it says, purpose, God will reveal it. You must fulfill it. Let me see. Yep.
There it is.
Make sure y'all can see it. If you can't see it, go to Facebook. Go to YouTube, and you will see it. Or just go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com on Shopify, and you'll see all of our teas, inspirational t-shirts that we have there. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. So that's our product of the week. Our teas. Also, our website is up, the dealhealfulfill.org, which is our company website, which if you go to that website, you will find out more about me as a speaker. You'll find more about the podcast, and also different products that we have is out there. And also our ebooks by E. James. Our ebooks is up. The website for our ebooks is up. If you go there, we have 3 ebooks that's available right now. So you can go there and check those out. So that's our product of the week and our websites. So I guess we can jump right in this thing today, just like any other day. We are blessed with the guest, Mr. Anthony Bullock. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm good, brother. How you doing, man?
I am good. I am good. First of all, let me say thank you for being here because you could have been doing anything else. But you're here with me and my listeners, and I definitely appreciate it. So I want you to know that up front.
Hey, look,
So
I appreciate you for having me, brother.
no problem, no problem. So from a previous conversation that we already had off air, I know that you are a girl dad, and so
Yes,
just
sir.
like any other time when I have a girl dad on, I have to ask you my two favorite questions. What does it mean to you to be a girl dad? And then what is something that your daughter has taught you?
Well, first off, man, to be honest with you, it means everything to me, right? Because I take pride in taking care of the women in my life, right? And so I get to show my daughter how I feel like she should be treated as a woman, right? Like I get that honor and that privilege to show her how she should be treated by a man or anybody else in this world. Like that's the most important thing to me. It means everything to me. And what has she taught me? Man, I mean, outside of patience, right? She's taught me really that, even after hitting a rock bottom, you can still overcome a challenge. And she taught me that, at a young age, when she went through a situation and she had to find some ways to get through it on her own, really, right? It was a lot of internal stuff that she was dealing with, that she had to, with support as well. But, she had to mentally overcome those things. So she's taught me how to bounce back.
All right, all right. So now we get into the regular the regular meats of the podcast. So do me a favor, introduce yourself to my listeners and tell us who you are and what it is that you do.
All right. So my name is Anthony Bullock. I am a resilient speaker to college athletes and high school students, and I talk about resilience and mental health to them.
All right, all right. So Anthony, one thing I know, when we have us who are in this field of speaking and motivation and things of that, there's a story behind who we are today.
Right.
We weren't always the version of ourselves, that we present to our audience. You know what I
hmm
mean? There was a story behind how we got to this point. So who was Anthony before Anthony became, the speaker that you are today?
So before I was a speaker today, I was the college student, the college athlete, the software developer, the database administrator. Like that was my life before me being a speaker. Um, prior to me actually going on to this journey, I was a career man, and I had really always wanted to speak, but I didn't think that I had a story. Right? I didn't think that I had a story that anybody would want to listen to, and so in my mind, I was like, if I don't have a story to tell anybody, nobody's gonna listen. They're not gonna have, they're not gonna get anything from me. So I really pushed it off for a long time, and then I had a tragic accident, man. That changed everything.
Okay, okay. Well, you want to tell us a little bit about that whole journey with the accident and how that kind of changed you into to make you take that leap?
Okay, cool. So what happened was, I was in a major roll of a car accident, and I rolled over on the highway. I flipped over a guardrail. Uh, Cops found me outside of my vehicle. According to police reports, I was outside in the cold for 2 hours before anybody even found me. The next day, I woke up in the hospital, surrounded by doctors and my mom. And my mom asked me if I knew where I was. I couldn't speak. I had tubes going down my throat. I was strapped down to the bed. And so the only way I could tell her no was like by moving my eyes from left to right. And so she told me at that time, she said, you were in a major road of a car accident and you're in the hospital. And then shortly after that, I remember the doctors walked into the office and they had told me that I had broken my neck, my back, my face, rib, skull, and shoulder. And so you can imagine, like exactly what that might have done to me, right? Like, one, I couldn't talk and I couldn't express myself, and I just had tears coming down my eyes. But it was like, yo, what's next? Like, if you tell me I can't walk, like, what am I gonna do? I'm not thinking about the possibilities that in that very moment. I'm thinking about this. My life is about to be over. You know what I mean? Like, I have nothing else to give if I can't walk, right? Like I took it for granted for so long. Now I can't do it, right? So 3 days later, I was blessed. I was extremely blessed. 3 days later, I was up and walking. And on the fifth day, I was released from the hospital.
Mm.
But there's not a single day where I don't feel some kind of pain from that accident, right? Like my shoulder still hurt today. My back still hurts today, right? But it just reminds me every day that, you know, things could have been a lot different. And I really had to start being grateful for the opportunities that I have and taking advantage of, every opportunity that I have. I've always been a positive dude. I've always been a goofy guy. But, after the accident, I guarantee you'll never see me have a bad day.
Right.
So yeah, so I didn't have a story then. God gave me one now. So here we are today.
Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit about that, not having a story, because I think we all have a story,
Mm-hmm.
but I think one of the things that a lot of us who may not necessarily have a hardship story, you know what I mean, don't feel like we got nothing to speak on, right? And so even with myself, one of the journeys that I had to go through is so I had some failures early on, early in the
Mm-hmm.
early part of my life, right? And so after I was able to bounce back and get on the right track, then I was like full speed ahead. So I became the good student, the honor roll student, the
Mm-hmm.
good son, so to speak,
Right.
doing everything right because I had already felt failure before and I didn't want no more of that, And so as I got older, I always kind of thought things through and made the right decisions. So, but what happened with that, with my friends and even my family that, who hadn't had a taste of failure as early as I did, they
Mm-hmm.
were making poor decisions and things like that, in their teenage years and things like that. And so they would look at me, and when I tried to tell them, like, hey, you shouldn't do that, you should do this, then it was like, oh, well, you the good one. You know what I mean? Like, you ain't
Right.
never did nothing
Right.
wrong. So it was like as if because I made the right decisions, that now I'm like some kind of like my decisions don't have as much weight because I haven't been through what you've been through. You know what I mean? And
Right.
so that's one of the things I have to tell people, like, no, number one, don't be weary and well doing. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're
Mm-hmm.
doing what's right, keep doing what's right. Because a person is gonna find something to say. If you do everything that's right, they're gonna say you ain't doing
Absolutely.
enough wrong. If you do everything that's wrong, they're gonna say you ain't doing enough right. You know what I
Right.
mean? So if they're
Right.
looking for an excuse, they're gonna find an excuse. You know what I
Everybody can
mean?
find something.
Yeah. And so it's like, don't allow people, to belittle you for doing what's right, or make you feel some type of way because they chose the hard road.
Right.
Oh man, I've been
Right.
locked up and I've been this and I've been that, and you ain't been through none of that, so you can't tell me nothing. Yes, I can. I can tell you how to make decisions so you don't have to go there. You know
Right.
what
So
I
you don't
mean?
go back.
Right. I always say, like, even with some of my homies who have been through some things, I would say, look, we grew up on the same block with the
Mm-hmm.
same street, we had the same choices. You just chose to make that choice,
Yep.
and I chose to make a different choice. So don't try to look down on me because I chose not to have hardships. I mean, life is hard enough, what I
Right.
mean, without choosing,
Right.
what I'm saying, to put some other things up on us. And so I want to address that because sometimes, you know, we don't feel like we have some people don't feel like they have something to say, but I think we all have something to say, even if you
Absolutely.
always have made the right decisions. Well, you can teach me how to make right decisions. You know what I
Right.
mean? You don't
Right.
necessarily have
Right.
to have a hardship to be able to teach somebody something. You know what I mean? But so I just wanted to address that. But even with your situation, because coming from that, feeling like you didn't have a story, I don't know. I want to say that God answers your prayer. Like, okay, let me give you a story.
Right.
But, you do have a story now,
Mm-hmm.
And so even coming out of that, then, I know that when we start making our choices and we start changing, and like, you know what, I'm going to choose to be better, you know, sometimes we have to look beyond ourselves. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying? Because,
absolutely.
even with your situation, especially being now you don't know if you can walk or will you ever be able to walk again and things like that. Sometimes we can't necessarily focus on ourselves, but we got to find something or someone to live for. So
Absolutely.
in your situation where you was at, and it could have been, your own future. You're thinking about that, but what was the one thing that, or the things that kind of got you through, like, you know what, I got to push through because, you know, maybe it's my mom, maybe it's, you know, just the future that I know that I have still in store. Like, what was that thing that kind of helped you get to that point? And if somebody else is in that same place or something like that, you know, how would you advise them to try to find, you know, that cause or that thing for them to push forward to?
So I'm gonna give you two different things. One, it was the first day that I got back from the hospital, right? And I remember my mom and my dad, they helped me walk into the house. I sat in the chair, and my dad said I had a box out on the front patio, right? And I remember I had the neck brace in, so I couldn't really turn my head or anything. I'm looking forward, and I said, "Okay, Pop, like bring it in." And he opened the box, and the things that he started to pull out made me cry instantly, right? And I got some of them right here, right? But he pulled out these canvas pictures, and I had me and my son. I had pictures of my son. I had pictures of me and my daughter, right? And I immediately started crying because I realized that had I not made it out of the accident, I would have left them with nothing, right? Not a business, not a 401k, not any real estate, not any wealth, like nothing. And that's what kind of hit me and smacked me in the face at that moment. And I was like, wow, like to sit back in that moment and realize and think about somebody else. Like I wasn't even concerned about me, right? Like it was just my son was just turning 1. Literally, I was released from the hospital 3 days before he turned 1. My daughter, who was 13 at the time, or excuse me, 11 at the time, right? She counting on me. And I would have left them with nothing. So that was, you know, really one of the biggest things that kind of hit me. But the other thing was, I remember coming in, and I used to coach my son and my daughter and my niece in volleyball, right? And I remember there was a game, there was a game that was coming up on Saturday. I got back to the house on, I want to say Thursday or Friday, either way. So I got back to the house and I told my mom, I said I need to get up to the game tomorrow or Saturday. I said, I need to get up to the game. And she would say, AJ, I don't, you know, she calls me AJ, Anthony Jason. AJ, I don't know if that's a good idea. She's like, you just had an accident. You really need to be resting. I'm like, no, like I need to go up there. I need you to take me up there on Saturday. And I remember she said, I don't think it's a good idea. Let's wait for a day. Let's see how you feel in the morning. If you feel okay, we'll get you up there. And so we got up there. I wasn't looking for any type of acknowledgement. I went up there, and as I walked into the gym, they stopped the game, right? I was walking in with a cane. I still had my neck brace on, everything. They stopped the game, and I remember everybody standing up and clapping. And I remember later on, my mom had said, she said, you know, a couple of weeks later, she said, why was it so important for you to get there? Like, why did you feel like you had to get up to the game? Like, I don't understand. You're going through all this pain. You're in a situation that you know, we wish you hadn't been in. What pushed you to go up to the game? And I was like, you know, somebody in the stands needed to see me going through what I was going through and see that they can pull through. Right? Somebody needed to see me in my situation and look back at their situation and say, okay, it could have been worse for me, but I'm here. I can keep moving forward. And I told her it wasn't about me. You know what I mean? Like I realized that things happen to you to bless somebody else. Right. And it wasn't until I realized that where now I can sit here and I can tell my story. I can be vulnerable about the things that happened to me in my past. You know, as a college athlete at the age of 19, I was in the room cutting myself across my chest because I was dealing with things. I'm okay with telling that story because I know it's going to save somebody else's life. Right. It's those kind of things that push me in the direction that I go now because it's not about me anymore. Right. And so what I would recommend to anybody else who, you know, is trying to figure that out, you might not have anybody, right, in your immediate family or in your immediate circle. Right. And that's the challenge. That's where it gets really tough when you don't have somebody that's right next to you. You might not be close to your mom or your dad. Right. You might not be close to your sister. You might not have kids or a wife or anything. Right. But who do you go to? There's somebody in your community that needs you. There's somebody that's going to look up to you. You just haven't found that person yet. And so I would recommend to volunteer in areas that you're passionate about. right? Like if you like sports, coach, right? Like that's what I did. I love coaching. I haven't coached in a few years, but that is sports is my passion. So I followed that, which is why I talk to college athletes, right?
Mhm.
I follow that passion. Find what you're passionate about and save somebody else in your community because there's somebody that's looking up to you that you don't even know yet.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why. So that's why with me, because so what we're talking about is finding that why, right?
Mm-hmm.
Finding that reason why you push forward, right? And so when I'm talking to people about it, I always say, you know, look for the person or the purpose, because like you said, you might not always have a person, you know what I mean, but you can always
Right.
have a purpose. So if you
Right.
can attach yourself to a purpose, you know, that's bigger than you. Like you said, somebody was in the audience that needed to see you going through, right? And another thing that I teach is when people ask, you know, why do bad things happen to good people? And I say, well, I think sometimes bad things happen to good people to let good people know that they can make it through bad things. You know what I mean? Because
Yep.
sometimes, you know, you think like, you know, I'm a good person, I'm doing everything right. And then you get hit with a hardship and you don't know what to do. You know what I'm saying? And like we was talking about earlier, you know, those people who have a story, quote unquote, has already been through some things. So maybe they're like, oh, I know I can make it through because I made it through this or this or that. But if you're a
Right.
good person and you've made the right decisions, you made the right choices, and then all of a sudden you get hit out of left field, it's like, oh my God, why did this happen to me? I didn't do nothing wrong. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? And so sometimes we, as those of us who may be the person that's done everything right, you know, are faced with a hardship, just so we can be an example to the other people that's trying to live right, that unfortunately we get hit with hardships too. But even when we get hit with a hardship, we still can make it, just like the person that been, you know, who may have been through several hardships and then build up enough, you know, fortitude to know, okay, I know I can get over the next thing. This may be our first thing that we've had to deal with that we felt like we couldn't handle.
Mm-hmm.
But now, because I seen you come in and you walk in that gym, you know what I'm saying? You're a
Yep.
good person, and just unfortunate something happened to you, but then you still getting up and moving. And I'm like, you know what? If he can do it, I can do it too.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and so sometimes, unfortunately, we have to be the example, you know, to the other good people that, you know what, you can make it through too. You don't necessarily have to, you know, have hardship after hardship to build up your, you know, fortitude to say, okay, I can make it through. But just knowing that, okay, if I see somebody else who's on the same track as me, who's on the
Mm-hmm.
same, you know, lifestyle as me, trying to live right, trying to make the right decisions, you know what I mean? And they still get hit with hardship, but then they still got back up, then I can do it too. You know, and so
Right.
I definitely like to, you know, point that out that, you know, sometimes that's just what it is. You know, sometimes, you know, the Bible says it rains on the just as well as the unjust. And so
Yep.
sometimes the just ain't, we just ain't got no umbrella. You know what I mean? So
You
we
know,
do
so,
it too. You know what I mean?
hey, and it's funny. Sometimes it just rains.
Yeah.
Like to be real. Like sometimes, you know, things just happen, and a lot of times we try to find out. You know, we try to attach everything to a reason,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like we always try to say, okay, why did this happen to me, right? And sometimes there's no reason. Sometimes let's put it like this. Sometimes there's no good reason,
Right. Yeah.
right? And it's kind of like in those moments, right? So say you've always made the right decision, right? You've never done anything wrong. You've gone through something. Like your life has not been 100%
Mm-hmm.
clean, where you never had a struggle or a tribulation that you had to get through,
Right.
right? And the thing is it's harder for younger kids, right? But it should be easier for adults to draw from those experiences from our past to say, you know what, I remember when this happened, I'm gonna be all right. I just gotta do X, Y, and Z, boom, 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 make some moves, and I'll be okay, right? But for a child, it's a little bit more difficult because they don't have the experiences to necessarily draw from,
Right.
right? But as an adult, it's still hard not to take it away because some people have had easier lives than others, and that's nobody's fault, right?
Yeah.
Families were set up differently, made different moves to set them up. I ain't mad at it. The thing is that when a person who has had nothing and has more to draw on and can pull from an experience to come out of it faster than somebody can potentially than somebody who's had it easy. But it doesn't mean that the person who's had it easy can't pull it through or can't find inspiration in somebody else,
Right.
right? as you were saying, right, the person in the stands looking at me saying, okay, life can be, difficult. I'm not going through that, thank God. But if he can do it, I can do it. If he can get up every day and come in here to this gym for a volleyball game that he's not even coaching in, right? If he can do that, I can wake up every day and keep trying to push harder. You know what I mean? Like that's just how I look at it.
Right, right. So let's talk a little bit about that. Creating that shift. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
From because I see like your shirt, you got your resilient shirt on. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
sir.
So for someone who's finding themselves, maybe they're in a hardship or something or dealing with something right now, and their mind is not quite there. Let's talk to us a little bit about that. Creating that mind shift to go from, you know, I don't know what to do to kind of okay, I'm getting an understanding of things
Yeah.
just to like the process, because I'm sure like with what you've been through, you had a process that you had to go through in order to become more resilient yourself. So if someone's kind of finding themselves in that place, talk to us a little bit about how to kind of make those changes.
So the example that I give when I'm giving speeches, right, is I give the example of me being in the desert or the jungle with my daughter and my son, right? And I tell them that if I see a lion that makes eye contact with me, right, like boom, we make eye contact, I'm gonna pee a little bit and I'm gonna run, right? Right? Like I'm gonna try to get out of there, right? But on the flip side of that, right, that's that fight or flight, right?
Mhm.
On the flip side of that, though, if I'm with my son and my daughter and the lion looks at my kids, totally different mindset.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like it's not about me and I got to save my baby. So I'm not thinking about running. I'm going to take on this lion as best as I can. You saw Beast? I don't know if you saw Beast with Idris Elba, but yo, like that's just the mindset that you have to have. But if you don't want to think about the example, right? If you're trying to pull from something else, ask yourself the question of what if? Like what if you can pull this off? Like if you can get through this, if you can get through this situation, right? How could this change your life? How could this change somebody else's life? How could this change your legacy? How could this impact your community? Right? Like when you start asking yourself like the what if, that changes the dynamic of the entire situation because now you're not looking at the problem, you're looking at solutions, right? You're saying, okay, what if I can pull this off? What do I need to do to get there? Versus, man, this always happens to me. Like something is always happening. I can't get through it. I can't catch a break, right? When you start saying things like that, when you don't make or when you start saying those negative statements, that's exactly what you get. Versus thinking about possibilities and saying that, you know what, I might be going through a situation right now, but I'm gonna get through it. I'm just going through a phase right now. I'm gonna transition, right? It's the little things that you say to yourself, that internal dialogue that is so important that's going to help you make a shift out of a problem. Like, and it's crazy because I remember even early on at a younger age when I was playing baseball, I say early age, ooh, I'm aging myself. I was 19, right? I was 19, but I remember saying that nobody loves me. I remember saying that nobody cares about me. My family would be better off if I wasn't here. Like I remember saying all of those things. And then I remember one day looking at my daughter and saying that she loves me. I remember looking at her and saying she cares about me. She needs me. The dialogue, it I I can't express enough how much that changed my life and what that made me start to think because I went back to school, right? I was in the military, right? I started having bigger dreams. I started thinking about things that I never thought of before, right? And it was all about what if I can do this? What can it do? And I think that's the most important thing. Like just being able to have a conversation with yourself sometimes and just being able to say, or think about what can happen if you get through it. Once you start doing that, man, I really think that's when the shift happens. There's no set process. There's no, set 1, 2, 3, and 4. I think if you just ask yourself the question and start thinking about possibilities, that's when everything follows.
Yeah, I think that's big, and I think that even with asking those questions and starting to ask yourself questions, that's one of the things that I've learned, especially in this journey with self development and things like that. Is the questions that you ask yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and so a lot of times, just looking on a situation that says, oh, I can't do that. And it says, well, if you change the language, just change the language opens up the possibility. So instead of saying I can't do it, start saying how can I do it? Then that
Right.
opens up your mind to automatically start thinking of ways to be able to do what you're trying to do. And it's like having that same question, or not the same question, but a different question of, a lot of people go through things and they say, why me? But then when you look at it on the other side of, well, why not me?
Right.
Why not me being able to take on this challenge? So now I can be an example to those around me. I can be an example to my
Right.
child, and things like that. So a lot of times we just have to change those questions around, and again, like you said, start asking those questions to yourself, and it changes your whole mindset. And by asking open-ended questions, it allows you to start thinking, allows your brain to start, being more creative and getting to that point where you're like, you know what, I can do something different.
Mm-hmm.
I can make a change. And one of the things that you talked about, just briefly, you mentioned about, looking at your daughter and be like, you know what, my daughter loves me, and I definitely resonate with that. And I've told this story on a podcast before about my own depression and having suicidal thoughts and things like that. And that was one of the things I had to do. I had to change my focus because I was focusing on myself and I couldn't do anything about the things I was going through. I
Right.
was going through debt. I was going through a divorce. My mom had passed away. All of those things was out of my control, you know.
Yep.
And so what I had to do, I had to take the focus off of me and focus on my daughter. My daughter was about 7 around that time. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, if I'm not here, what's going to happen to her? You know what I
Right.
mean? And so that became my focus, and that became my why, as we talked about earlier. With
Yes,
that,
sir.
that person or that purpose. You know, that you just grab onto and say, if for no other reason, I'm gonna hold on because of this. I'm gonna hold on because of this person, or I'm gonna hold on because of this purpose that I
Mm-hmm.
want to see come to fruition, that I want to see do better. And I know that I can help it happen. With me being here, and so that definitely became my thing with my daughter. Was like I got to stay here for her, if for no other
Right.
reason. Maybe things for myself is not going right. Maybe I'm in some situations that I can't change, and I'm feeling bad about it. But what I can change, what I can do is just be here for her, until
Mm-hmm.
things turn around for me. But I can take the focus off me and put it on her, and then
Right.
that way I'm able to get out of it. And so I definitely resonate with that, with
Mm-hmm.
changing that focus. So let's talk a little bit about, because you mentioned that about you speaking, to the high school kids and the
Mm-hmm.
colleges. How long have you been speaking, and what has kind of been that journey, you know getting into that space and now being able to share your story, from a stage and resonate with your audience?
Right. So it started in my accident was in 2020, February 29th, actually. Right. So I don't even get to have an anniversary until next year. Right. But it happened then. And I remember it was probably it was around May. And I remember saying, I want to speak. Right. Like I have a story. Right. Like people would like the story of adversity, of overcoming adversity. Right. And so I remember sitting back and I was like, look, I said, God, if this is what you want me to do, if this is the path that I'm supposed to go down, I said, I'm gonna join Toastmasters. I'm gonna join the international speech competition. Take me where you think I deserve to be. Right. And that first year, I went all the way to district. I won district. I made it to quarterfinals, but then I lost in quarterfinals. And at that moment, April of no, excuse me, August of 2021, when I found out that I didn't make it. to semifinals. And I said, God, if this is it, you just showed me, right? Like if I had any doubt, you just confirmed that I'm supposed to be here, because I didn't think that I was good enough to speak, right? I didn't have any like formal training prior to that. It was just me getting up on stage, and sharing my story. And so the journey really started there. The journey started in Toastmasters, and I'm still in Toastmasters today. I'm actually competing this year also.
Right.
So, so, and it's something because I feel like that's practice, right? And I do it for free, right? There's not a monetary prize at the end of it. I do it because a couple of reasons, but I only list a couple. I do it because somebody can always benefit from my story. That's number one. Not about me, somebody else, right? The other reason is because I'm passionate about being around people, right? Like I don't know if you've heard the DISC assessment, but I'm a high I,
Mm-hmm.
right? Very, very, I'm very influential, right? Like I get energy from being around people. So it gives me my energy, it fills my battery up, right? But the other thing that it does is that it shows me that I can be just as passionate for free, just as passionate as I am for a fee,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's kind of where it all shifted for me a little bit more. Was I enjoy doing it, period. That little like tweak in my mindset, it gave me the ammo to speak, to go and talk to principals about me sharing my story. It gave me the ammo to go and talk to these college facilitators or staff members about sharing my story. Once again, because it's not about me, it's easier for me to talk to somebody else about what value I can bring to them, right? So now here we are, 3 years in the game, 3 years in the game, and I've talked to probably about 20. No, I'd say roughly between 10 and 15,000 kids,
Mm.
right? Coming from the guy who didn't think he had a story,
Right. Right.
right? Coming from the guy who wasn't sure if this is what he should be doing at first, right? And it was, going back to the conversation a little bit further, we were talking about having the story before you think you have a story,
Mm-hmm.
right? People could have heard about my story and me cutting myself and could have benefited from hearing how I overcame that, right? I didn't think I was a good dad for a long time, to a point where I had to apologize to my daughter, and she didn't think anything was wrong, but because I felt it internally, I felt
Mm-hmm.
the need to apologize. Fathers can benefit from that, right?
Definitely.
But I didn't think about that. I didn't think about who I could help. I was thinking about me. And so if anybody wants to go and speak, right, to any, I don't want to say to any audience, think about the problems that you already have right now or that you have gotten through, right? And the ones that make you the most nervous to talk about, right? Because those are the ones that are life changing, right? The ones where you feel really uncomfortable about sharing with other people because you feel like it makes you look weak.
Mm.
That's where you want to, as hard as it may be, that's kind of where you want to dig in and really kind of make things shift for yourself. But yeah, that's kind of the journey for me, brother.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to just hit on two things that you said. One thing, on the podcast on previous episodes, that was one of the things that we did talk about with me and some of the other guests that I had on, was about that, the fathers, and getting that forgiveness piece. One of my, we make clips of different videos. So one of my videos, one of my highest watched videos on YouTube, is a clip of one of my guests who was a father, who was talking about going to his daughters and asking for forgiveness, for some things, and like you said, that's definitely something that we can learn, from those things as men. we have a story to tell. And I think that as we begin to open up and be open about our situation, the things that we've been through, and even some of our trials and the way that we look at things as fathers, as men, to be vulnerable and say, you know what, I messed up in some of these cases. Definitely we opened up the door for all of us to grow. Not just as men, but as fathers, as brothers, as husbands. You know what I mean? It just opened up a whole door for us. The other thing that I want to mention about, when we step out of ourselves, once we get our minds off of what we've been through, there's so much that we can do to benefit others. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So even on this journey, one of the workshops that I was a part of not too long ago as a speaker, and the teacher was like, you know what, actually sit down and write out all the things that you've been through, right? And then you will see how your life can relate to so many things. And I'm 46, you know what I mean? So when I sat down and started writing, it was so funny because it was so much that I had been through that I had even forgot. Just like, oh, wait, I forgot I even did that. You know what I mean? I forgot I even had that hardship. But then when you start bringing up, really going as far as back you can, and really just walking forward through your life and look at everything that you've overcome, we go back to what we were talking about earlier, when you don't feel like you haven't had a story, but then when you really stop to think about it, you're like, oh wait, I overcame that, I overcame that, I overcame that. You know what I mean? But sometimes we so caught in the moment, we get so caught up in the moment and the current hardship that we forget how much we've already overcame. You know what I mean? And so I think that was something real valuable that I learned, in that exercise, especially as a speaker. It's like, you can relate to more people than you think when you really think about all that you've been through, and not just looking at, oh, well, this was one hardship that I know they can relate to. But like, no, go back all the way back to the beginning.
All the way back.
All your hardship. Just like,
I have a list in my phone too.
Yeah. And I think it's valuable. And even if you're not a speaker, I think it's valuable just for your own self-encouragement to really look back over your life and be like, oh, you know what? I am strong. I am resilient because I made it through all these things, and so successfully that I forgot I even had it. I forgot it even happened. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think that's good, man.
But it's kind of like what I was saying earlier, right? It's easier when you have experiences to draw from. Once you start writing those things down, and it's a great exercise that you did, and I have the same list, right? Because I'm able to pull from different stories. Like that's what I do. I'll pull different stories, so I'm not I have one big core story, but I can pull from a lot of different other stories, right? To deliver different principles. But if you write it down and you look back, when you hit the next roadblock, it's fresh in your mind, or you can go back to the list. You can go back and say, you know what, I did come. This is nothing. I'm tripping.
Right.
This is nothing compared to that. All I got to, man, I'm tripping. Let me get. Right. Let me get out of this real quick.
You had that Lion King moment. Be like, remember who you are.
Right.
You know what I mean? You have to tell yourself,
right.
Who you are, man. You done made it this far.
I forgot who I was.
Yep, man. On 100. Man, I'm so glad I had you on, man. I want you to do me a favor, right? I want you to have the last word. So I want you to leave us with like a word of motivation or inspiration, however you feel, to express yourself, and definitely leave us with your social media handles and all those things where we can follow you and keep up with you. So I'm gonna give you a couple of seconds to think about that. While you're thinking about that, what I was gonna do is something I wanted to say. I know what it was. To my listeners, I told you guys that I would tell you how you could win $100 from the podcast. And you can win $100 from the podcast by entering our super subscriber contest. What that means is you must first subscribe to our YouTube page, our Facebook page, and our podcast on Spotify. And after you've done those three things, text the word WIN, WIN, to the number 866-326-0730. That's 866-326-0730 to qualify to win $100. It's an ongoing contest. So, it's ongoing and it's random, which means that anytime you can win, and you don't have to do nothing outside of, subscribe to the podcast, which you're doing anyway. You like the podcast, you listening, you watching, you might as well subscribe, make sure you don't miss any episodes, and make sure you can catch it on the go by subscribing to our Spotify, and our Facebook page. So just do that, and if you do that, you guys can win $100 from the podcast. It's just that easy. Yep. So definitely want to. And also another thing that I want you guys to be looking out for, and I know I've talked about it before, but one of the things that I've been blessed to be a part of is I'm part of this organization called the Forgiveness Mission, and you can find them at forgivenessmission.com. And we offer free virtual workshops every quarter of the year talking about forgiveness. And so, whenever you listen to this, either it's one just passed or it's one coming up, and it's free, don't cost you anything, but I think it's very, very valuable information. We talk about forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, forgiveness of the world, and even just what forgiveness is and who is it for. I think it's definitely a conversation that needs to be had. And so we're having it. So you guys just check in with forgivenessmission.com, and you'll be able to sign up to be a part. And again, it's free, it's virtual, and we do them every quarter of the year. So we do 4 a year. So yeah, you guys check it out. And I think it'll definitely be a help to all of you who take out the time to take part of that. We definitely begin great input, great responses from those who have been a part. And so, I think you guys should check it out. So, besides that, Mr. Bullock,
yes, sir.
Again, man, let me say thank you for being on and
I appreciate you for having me
with your presence. So I'll let you have the last word. So the floor is yours.
Okay, well, look, the one thing that I really started out with, right? The one quote that I used to always say before I put the resilience on my chest is that your problems are your circumstances, not your reality. We're gonna go through things all the time. Life is going to always throw us a curveball. It doesn't matter what happens. What matters the most is how you respond to it. Right? Just because I talk about resilience doesn't mean that I have it all put together.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like there's days where I have good days and I have bad days, just like any other human. But I get to respond the way that I decide to respond. Right? So full transparency, before the accident, right? My son was born. He was 8 months old, and I lost my job. Right? Shortly after that, I got another job. Got fired from that one after my accident. Right? Then I had the accident. Went through a divorce. Right? Was a bad dad. Right? Came to that whole reality. We're going to have things that happen in our life. You need to respond in a positive way and understand that you are human, just like the next person, but your response to the problem is what's going to change your perspective. That's what's going to change the situation. Your problems are your circumstances. They are not your reality unless you choose for it to be that way. It's a solid choice. And like Ernest was saying earlier, make the right choice.
That's right. Give us your social media handles where we can find you and follow you. And for anybody that wants to definitely have you come to their school, where can they find you to get in contact with you?
All right. So if you want to find me on social media, on Instagram, it is ab.motivates, as you can see on the screen. ab.motivates for Instagram. Then on Facebook, it's ab.motivates. And if you want to email me, it is ajbullock, BULLOCK .motivates@gmail.com.
All right. We can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, where our mission is to help people to deal, to heal, and to fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Until next time, we will see you guys next week. Be blessed. Hey guys, I know you're enjoying the podcast. However, don't forget to join our text line at 866-326-0730. That's 866-326-0730 in order to receive text messages with new events and things that is going on and new episodes as they release. All right, see you in a minute. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.